Hey everybody, I'm super excited to be back in my normal space for my top 5. It's been a little while since I did this, mostly because it took a long time to get through the top 50 my favorite board games with Lewis. And so I am happy to be back here, and having just finished several legacy games this past year, I couldn't wait to start ranking my top 5 legacy games. I have played a total of 11 legacy games, and I have 2 games that are legacy that I've not played that are here in the basement. One is Seafall and the other is Risk. Those are some of the earlier ones that came out that I need to experience, I want to play. I had heard some things about them that were maybe not as exciting or made me want to jump into them, but they are still on my list of games I want to play at some point. I am going to rank the top 5. Those are the 5 for me that really rise to the top, and I will tell you why, but this is fully no spoilers, so don't expect too many images, because our games are completely eaten up, chewed through, played, torn up, stickers, written, everything. I mean, the games you experience in Legacy are one-time experiences, but for the money you invest in it, it well pays for itself in the time and the experience of playing game after game after game with the same group. So my first suggestion is just play a legacy game. Just play any of them. I mean, again, the ones that I think are really fun may not necessarily top your list, but I think all of these legacy games are super. So to start off my list, it's my number 5. Now, I would be remiss if I did not include one of the seasons of this game. You guessed it. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Now, this might be a stretch, but I'm going to say that this Pandemic season essentially stands in for all of the Pandemic Legacy games. Season 1, Season 2, and Season 0. Now, if you want to find out what I rank those in particular order, be sure to check out my most recent video where I rank the Pandemic Legacy seasons. But for me, Season 1 is going to stand in for my experience playing Pandemic over the last, 6 years or 7 years or so? This series is just built on such a strong foundation. So Pandemic, the base game, is great. It's super balanced, it's challenging, it's a cooperative game, and I think it's just a solid game. So if you jump into any of the seasons of Pandemic Legacy, you will not be disappointed. There are surprises, there are shocks. You will essentially play this game through and feel the challenge. You will feel the crisis. You will be on the edge of your seat with this game. And I think that's such an exciting experience to share with fellow players, particularly because you're in the same boat. You're fighting to save the world and you're doing it together. So, can't think of a better way to start off my top 5 list than with Pandemic Legacy Season 1. My number 4 favorite legacy game is another cooperative game. It is Aeon's End Legacy. I think I can probably stop saying legacy at this point with the title, but I'll still say it. So, Aeon's End Legacy takes Aeon's End, which again, much like Pandemic, has such a wonderful core. That's probably one of the things that you're going to notice I keep saying over and over with these top 5s, because I'll compare some of these at the end to the games that didn't make my list and why. And the reason Aeon's End does is because it is a thoroughly satisfying, wholly challenging, really cool, unique system that I just love playing, and it's cooperative. So in this, instead of saving the world, well, you're saving the world. Just against monsters instead of a disease. You're not playing on a map like you are in Legacy. In this, you have your character board, and you are going to be playing cards. This is a deck builder, and the way you play your cards is into your discard pile, and when you want to take that discard pile back, you just take it, flip it over, and set it down in your draw area. There are places for you to fire off magic, and you are fighting this creature that has minions and has all these different things that change up the game. It's super intense, it's super fun. The way turn order happens in Aeon's End is that you shuffle up a deck of initiative cards, and every round you don't know who's going first. You don't know who's going second, third, fourth, whatever. Every time you play a round, you go in a different order. Again, so exciting, so fun. And again, you are playing with your friends. The Legacy continues a story that's ongoing. You continually add new items that you can buy and add to your decks. You're fighting harder and harder villains. And the story overall is really satisfying. Again, I couldn't ask for more than what Aeon's End Legacy gave me. Really exciting. I wish I could tell you about more of the details, but let's just say this game had a wonderful end and then some. My number 3 Legacy game was actually a game I played the first round of at Gen Con in a demo, and I was really excited to check it out and play the entire game. None of the secrets were spoiled, everything was kind of kept back, but we got the feel for the game and I really got excited. It is... Whoa! So I can't find this game anywhere. I looked everywhere. We have closets and other parts of the basement, not just the gaming room where we keep things, and I cannot find this game anywhere. We have kept every single game, particularly Legacy games, even though they are eaten and chewed up and just gone through and you can't play them again, we still have kept them, hence the board game boxes for everything else that I have. And it breaks my heart that we can't find this game. So I don't know where it is. If you see it in any of my videos, let me know. The game is Rise of Queensdale. Yeah, so this game was really good for my group because we played with 3 players and the game goes up to 4. And I thought that it worked particularly well for 3 and I assume for 4 as well because there are 4 quadrants in the board area where you place all of your advancements. So this game, oh gosh, it just did something that grabbed me, and it gives this chance for players to catch up in the game. There's a catch-up mechanism, and the way that points are scored and the way that you mark your score on the track game by game by game changes. And I just thought that was so innovative. And I love the theme of the game as well. It just captured me in a way that, again, I found wholly enjoyable. This is an independent game. You are playing competitively against the other players. And I think for me, it gave me a chance to really work on my strategy from game to game to game. What developments was I going to seek? What challenges am I going to actually try to accomplish, and why and when? There's timing in this game, and so you really want to make sure that you're doing everything you can do. There are dice in this game, so be ready for some dice rolling and for them to not necessarily be exactly what you want them to be. But in addition to your dice placement, you are also sharing this dice placement board where you want to go, and so opponents might actually block your spaces for your actions. There's so much wonderful choice and a little bit of complexity here based on what you do, when you do it, and how you really build over round after round after round of games playing this. It's just really cool. Okay, so getting down to it, my number 2 pick for Best Legacy Game could very easily have been my number 1, but for me, my number 2 is a cooperative game that you can play almost endlessly. It is Gloomhaven! Yes! Look at this box. So much packed in that box. Gloomhaven, it's a cooperative adventure. You get to play different characters. You get to level up your characters and play the neatest cards 2 cards a turn. You do the top action on one, the bottom action on the other. You have to think about initiative. You got to think about where you are on the map. You got to think about what your overall goal is. You got to work with your teammates to overcome the challenge, whatever the challenge is. It's a wonderful, wonderful dungeon crawl game. It's so good. It's so good. And there are minis in there, and I got super into painting the minis for Gloomhaven. So I mean, it was wholly immersive. This game stands above Jaws of the Lion for me, but I think Jaws of the Lion is fantastic. It's just smaller and more streamlined, and we played obviously less campaigns of it, but it was still well worth our playing when we played through Jaws of the Lion. So, that aside, so excited for Frosthaven. Really excited for Frosthaven. But Gloomhaven is just something that captured gamers in the gaming community, and it did so rightly so. I mean, it earns every last bit that it gives. It's so wonderful, packed with amazing stories and really challenging experiences that you remember forever. You go through this and you say, remember when? And it's just great. It's stories. You fail, you play again, it's still great. You win, you play another one, it's great. Every time you do anything, it's great. You play Gloomhaven, it's great. It's just great. Make sure you get the dividers though, and yeah, enjoy exploring all the different characters and their decks, their unique decks and gameplay. Explore all the different monsters in the rooms you can. Do as much as you can with this game. I know it's a lot, I know it's big, it's a lot to take out, it's a big time investment, but it's worth every minute, penny, energy. It's worth it all. So, now we are at my number 1, which is probably going to be pretty controversial. Having spoken with one of my games-based learning groups, it seems like it's more of a polarizing game than I thought. Now, I told you I would explain why this is my number 1 over Gloomhaven, and I shall. But first, let me introduce you to my number 1 legacy game. Clank Acquisitions Incorporated. Yes! This is a game that I grew with and that I felt. Like, when I think about all the legacy games, I think about experience. That's what it is for me. Legacy means you are engaged in a narrative. You are working either individually or with a group. 3 of my games out of my top 5 are cooperative games. Only 2 of them are competitive games. So that shows you that it doesn't matter if it's cooperative or competitive, where you're playing by yourself or with others. But for me, Clank made me, honestly, feel the most anxiety I've ever felt in any legacy game. We would always play on Sunday nights, and when it got around to Sunday nights, Saturday night, I would start to like have so much anxiety because I wanted to do so well, and I wanted to ride that razor's edge of pressing your luck, because in Clank, you have to go a certain distance, grab a bunch of stuff, and then head back out. And both sides of the map, which Clank Legacy gives you 2 different maps, they grow. You add these giant stickers to add more rooms and more locations and more, goal spots. I wanted to do that, and I wanted to just nab it. I mean, like, to me, it was like I wanted to play the perfect game every time I played, and obviously I didn't. I mean, you get caught. You get stuck, or you go too soon, and then you don't get as much stuff as you want. But it's just, for me, it was just such an exciting game. It had the thing that I wanted as a gamer, which is just a little bit of unpredictability and a little bit of fly by the seat of your pants, which to me is so appealing. Now, Clank is a deck builder, and in the Legacy version, it's so much more developed than the base game. Now, I know I mentioned in the first 2 games, Aeon's End and Pandemic have great base games, and the Legacies build on that. So for me, Clank, the base game, isn't as strong as the Legacy. I think that the core of it is just fine. I mean, the game still does the core, the Legacy game, but it makes it more involved. You have special cards that nobody else has. You get to draft things. You get to really shape how you want to play this deck builder, and I think that that is so fun. I really, really liked it, and I liked my character, and I painted those guys too. I've been getting into my mini painting, and it just had something that I don't feel like the other games had, which was mystery comedy. I mean, that game was so funny. It was funny. The stories were funny. The everything in between, when you looked at it, like even the maps and all the stuff, it was just funny. The cards were funny. They were hilarious. When you look at your cards in your hand, I love the humor. It's so light and playful. Clank is light and playful and perfect. So Clank Legacy tops my charts. It makes me feel more emotions than all the other games, and I had a fantastic time playing Clank Legacy. Alright, so that was my top 5. The games that didn't make my list that I played were My City, Charterstone, The King's Dilemma, and Betrayal of the Betrayal at House on the Hill. So those games didn't top my charts. I felt like they all are solid games for me. My City didn't end the way I thought it was going to end, and things got a little messy. I do like the game, and I would play it again, and we have the game so that you can actually play on the other side. I think it's great that you can actually consume it, but then you can play again with any of the additions that you want. So My City is a great addition to anyone's gaming collection, but for me, it soured at the end. Similarly, The King's Dilemma did that for me as well. We kind of slogged through it, made some mistakes, and also felt like maybe the choices you make weren't necessarily based in dilemmas and moral choices. They were just based on, well, what gets me victory points? And so it didn't necessarily feel like a game that involved personal choice with characters. It just really was, well, how do I get points, and how do I maximize my turn? And you know, who cares about terrible, terrible issues like murder and slavery and you know, drought and things like that. So both of those kind of went meh at the end. Charterstone was really good, but we played a 3-player and the game goes to 6. And I think that the board just was half fallow. It just didn't get developed, and it didn't get built, and it didn't get used. And so I think we played the game with too few players for it to be fully immersive and the size that it needed to be. But it also was really cool. I like Charterstone a lot. It just barely missed my list. Charterstone is actually 6th. So I liked it a lot, but I think we just played it with the wrong amount of players. And then lastly, Betrayal just didn't work for our group. It didn't make sense a lot of times. There was this real big swing with who gets to be the baddie, so everyone's playing together until something triggers, and then one person essentially becomes the bad person, and then you get points if you can beat everyone else at the table. And it just kind of felt a little weird. Every time somebody went bad, we were like, oh, but we were playing together, and now you're like trying to kill me? So we were like, and one player never got to be the baddie, just by luck. And so they never got to experience some part of the game. And so I kind of was like, the trigger for like when that kicked in was sometimes too early, sometimes it was too late. So for us, we didn't necessarily enjoy Betrayal Legacy, I think the way it might have been intended. So those games were on the bottom end of my experience. And again, I kind of pulled in Pandemic Season 2 and 0 in with my 1, but I enjoyed those games as well. Thanks for joining me for my top 5 Legacy games. I love Legacy games, and I hope you do too. Let me know in the comments below what your top 5 Legacy games are, if you like the games that I mentioned, or if you've played the games that I haven't. I'll see you next time.